Hi class, these are the key terms for the Criminology chapter on political crime and terrorism. A political crime, according to the textbook, or political crimes include illegal acts designed to undermine an existing government and threaten its survival. These can include dissent. There are some countries where just speaking up or even sharing a video can be considered a political crime. So they can include dissent, treason, which we'll go into later, espionage, we'll go into that later, and violent acts such as terrorism, which we'll also go into later, or assassination, which I don't need to go into. Who gets to use this term? It's extremely subjective, as I mentioned before. The causes of political crimes, interesting thing about political crimes, unlike the crimes we've discussed thus far in this semester, those who commit political crimes may be motivated by principle, by faith, by conviction. If you read about Julian Assange, or you read about Edward Snowden, or you read about et cetera, there were a number of examples in the textbook. Randy Borum, who's a political crime expert, says there are stages to becoming a political criminal. I think they're interesting. You won't be quizzed on them. First stage is, it's not right. Someone goes through that. And then the second stage is, this is not fair. Third stage, it's your fault. Fourth stage, you're evil. That's sort of the process of becoming a political criminal. Once someone is dehumanized, once you don't see someone as human, people justify all kinds of violence if someone isn't a human being on the other side. The first crime mentioned in the book is election fraud. There's a lot of noise, especially in the United States, in right-wing media about this. Election fraud is very rare. In history, according to the textbook, there's been a handful of election frauds, meaning almost none. That's the facts, not the noise. The noise is very distracting. Treason. Where is treason? Oh, there's treason. I'm sorry they're on the same line. I wanted to figure out everything on one page. Treason is an act of disloyalty to one's nation or state, helping or cooperating, aiding and comforting, as it says in the Constitution, an enemy at the time of war. There have been in our entire history about 40 prosecutions for treason, and most were acquitted. It's the only crime in the Constitution mentioned. It's Article 3, Section 3. Interesting sort of footnote, you'll never be tested on this. There's this idea of corruption of blood. Isn't that a great phrase, corruption of blood in England? In other words, what that means is if you commit treason, your kids in England are also tainted or punished. In the U.S., it's specifically mentioned in Article 3, Section 3, that except during the life of the person who commits the treason, the kids don't have to bear the stigma after the person's death. Well, they're trying to be nice, but gee. Okay. Espionage. Trying to be nice, trying to be just. The founding fathers were trying to be just. Espionage means spying. In other words, stealing confidential information from a government or organization or society. When it's industrial espionage, it involves trying to get data from corporations, such as trade secrets, computer codes, product formulas, stuff like that. A state political crime is a crime perpetrated by state authorities against the people they're supposed to serve. It's often to uphold race or class or gender advantages of the people who support the government. The varieties of state-sponsored crime, or state political crime, include political corruption, illegal domestic surveillance, much talked about in the textbook, human rights violations, state violence, such as torture, illegal imprisonment, police force and use of deadly force, and state corporate crime. Torture, as you well know, is an act that causes severe pain or suffering. Whether that's physical or mental, it's intentionally inflicted on purpose to obtain a confession or punish someone or intimidate them or force them into a desired action. There's almost no evidence that torture works. Much more research suggests, an enormous volume of research suggests torture can create serious problems in addition to severely harming a human being. Torture damages civil rights and democratic institutions that perpetrate it. It can cause the general public to have sympathy for the victims, no matter what their evil intent. Torture. Some experts justify torture of certain individuals with this idea of the ticking bomb scenario. The idea that if a person knows the whereabouts of a dangerous explosive device that is set to go off and kill thousands of people, well, then torture's okay. That's the only justification for torture that, I don't know, could we debate it? Hard to know. Torture often doesn't work, again. Terrorism is the illegal terrorism is the illegal use of force against innocent people to achieve a political objective. The textbook describes many kinds, including revolutionary terrorism, political terrorism, nationalist terrorism, retributive terrorism, that's fighting for just the principle of good versus evil, state-sponsored terrorism, and then the lone wolf terrorist, that's very rare. Many terrorist organizations operate in small bands with a very narrow focus. In the United States, terrorism is largely confined to right-wing, heavily armed, what we call domestic terrorists, organized around issues like white supremacy, anti-abortion, no taxes, religious revisionism, most famously the Ku Klux Klan. In the last 30 years, there have been over 100 terrorist plots in the United States. 70% were foiled by law enforcement. Most were perpetrated by U.S. citizens or residents, about 75%. No terrorist in the United States history has ever been a refugee. Again, the media bleats this misinformation. It's important for you to know no refugee in this country has ever been a terrorist. Very few terrorist organizations are left-wing. The book mentions the Animal Liberation Front against the cruelty to animals, the Earth Liberation Front protecting the environment. Very few. Insurgency, let's do that right. An insurgency seeks to confront the existing government for control of all or a portion of its territory, or force political concessions in sharing political power. That's an insurgency. Insurgents often receive aid from neighboring sympathizers. They often root outside of the nation, and they may represent a popular movement. These are different kinds of terrorism. Guerrilla, by contrast, are an anti-government armed force, usually located in a rural area, that attacks the military, the police, and government officials to destabilize the existing government. A guerrilla can grow large. It can be a type of insurgent band. Revolutionary, let's tell you what a revolution is. A revolution is a civil war fought between nationalists and a sovereign power that holds control of the land. Or it's fought between the existing government and local groups over issues of ideology and power. Failed state, just want you to know this, it's in the textbook. A nation whose government has lost control of its own territory and is unable to provide public services and protection. The nation lacks the ability to interact with other states as a full member of the international community. Failed states are hatching grounds for terrorism of many kinds. I want you to know about habeas corpus because this is a defense that people who have been unlawfully held have used in the United States to get a fair trial. According to Merriam-Webster, habeas corpus is the right of a citizen to obtain a writ of habeas corpus as a protection against illegal imprisonment. In other words, the habeas corpus claim, the literal meaning of habeas corpus is you shall have the body. That is, the judge must have the person charged with a crime brought into a courtroom to hear what he or she's been charged with, or they. Through much of human history, and in many countries still today, according to Merriam-Webster, a person may be imprisoned on the orders of someone in the government and kept behind bars for years without ever getting a chance to defend himself, themselves, herself, or even knowing what they've done wrong. And in the United States, we have the right of habeas corpus. Thank you, class, and have a good afternoon.